On the outskirts of a small Northern California suburb sat a rental home that looked peaceful from the outside. Neighbors were close enough to feel safe, but far enough to offer privacy. At night, the road disappeared into darkness because there were no streetlights. The stillness suited the woman who lived there. Her name was Rachel. She worked long hours and valued the silence when she finally came home. One winter night, she pulled into her driveway after a long shift. Clouds covered the moon, and the property vanished behind a soft layer of shadow. Her headlights and the small porch lamp were the only points of light. As she stepped out of her car, she stopped. There was a faint smell of cigarette smoke drifting through the cold air. She had never smelled it around her house before. The place sat far enough from the road that someone would have needed to step onto her property to smoke there. She waited, scanning the tree line. Nothing moved. No footsteps, no voices, just the dark yard and the smell fading on the wind. She brushed it off, went inside, and got ready for bed. Hours later, she woke suddenly. She had heard something downstairs. At first, she wasn't afraid. A close friend sometimes stopped by before his night classes to use her shower. She had given him a spare key, and she assumed it was him. She reached for her phone to check for a text, but the glare from the old screen washed out everything. She couldn't even see her notifications. She set the phone down and called his name. There was no answer. Then footsteps exploded across the first floor, loud, fast, and wrong. Someone was running through her house. Rachel jumped out of bed and sprinted to her closet. She slipped inside and shut the door. The intruder hit the stairs immediately. By the time she crossed the closet floor to the attic access panel, he was already on the second level. That floor had 3 doors: her bedroom, a spare room where she kept boxes and painted miniatures, and a small bathroom at the end of the hall. Every door was closed except the bathroom door, which was cracked open. She froze and listened. The intruder ran straight past her room and into the bathroom. That single mistake bought her the seconds she needed. She pushed the attic panel open and pulled herself into the dark space above. She had barely lifted her legs when her bedroom door burst open. Heavy footsteps rushed inside. From the attic opening, she could see only his lower legs. Dirty jeans, frayed cuffs, worn work boots. He scanned the room, realized she wasn't there, and stormed into the spare room. Boxes scraped across the floor. Something toppled. Then he charged back into the bedroom. The closet door flew open. Rachel didn't breathe. She hovered just a foot above him, bracing in case he tried to climb up. He didn't. He stared into the closet for several long seconds, then stepped back and let out a scream. It was violent and unhinged, a sound that reminded her too much of her stepfather's anger, the same anger that eventually sent him to a hospital. Moments later, the intruder ran downstairs. Rachel stayed where she was. She didn't have her phone, and climbing down meant risking noise. She stayed in the attic and listened as crashes echoed through the house. Furniture toppled, cabinets slammed. Then silence settled over everything. She counted slowly until she reached 1,000. Then she climbed down. Her bed was flipped. Her phone was gone. She used the landline to call the police and waited upstairs until officers arrived. Downstairs, the scene was worse. Chairs overturned, shelves emptied, food scattered across the kitchen floor. The only thing missing was a single kitchen knife. Officers found that the side door had been forced open with something like a crowbar. Along the fence line, they found cigarette butts, foil, and a burnt pen tube, items commonly used to smoke meth. They believed the intruder had been watching the house for days. That meant the cigarette smell earlier wasn't random. He had been standing in the dark, watching her come home. Police told Rachel not to stay there that night, but she couldn't bring herself to leave. She blocked the broken door with a shelf and stayed awake until sunrise. Every so often, she swept a flashlight across the yard. She didn't see anyone. The next day, she repaired the door, added motion lights, and ran a phone line up to the attic, so she would never again hide without a way to call for help. She stayed in that house for 3 more years without another incident. But the experience changed her. She practiced escaping. She practiced moving from her bed to the closet, climbing into the attic, and doing it without making noise. When she eventually moved to a new home, she kept practicing. Only now she slipped into a crawl space instead of an attic, because she still thinks about the part that never stops haunting her. If she had been a moment slower, or if he hadn't walked into the bathroom first, she would have been trapped in that closet with nowhere left to hide. In a quiet neighborhood on the edge of a foggy Midwestern town lived a boy named Derek, an elementary schooler with a predictable morning routine. His mother worked early shifts, so she always woke him before sunrise. Their house was small, warm, and lived in. On school days, the sound of his alarm clock never mattered. His mother always got him up before it rang, except for one morning. On that day, she burst into Derek's room in a panic. She had overslept, and because she was his alarm, he had overslept too. His bus usually arrived at 7 o'clock. Their clock showed close to 6:40. Derek was still in pajamas, half awake, and hadn't eaten a bite. There was no chance he would be ready in time. His mother decided they would skip the bus entirely. She would drive him to school instead, which would give him time to finish breakfast, get dressed, and still arrive before the bell. Fog covered the yard outside. The dining room felt muted and grey. Derek sat at the table, legs dangling off the chair, eating cereal while the house slowly came to life around him. The clock reached 6:50. Then a school bus pulled up. It was earlier than usual, much earlier. His mother walked to the front door and opened it. Cold fog drifted inside. She waved the driver on, signaling that Derek would not ride today. But the bus didn't leave. Its engine idled in the mist. A few seconds later, there was a knock. Derek looked over, expecting to see his regular driver. Instead, a man he had never seen stood in a crisp bus driver's uniform. He explained that he was a substitute because the regular driver had called in sick. He said he was early because he wanted extra time to learn the route. Derek's mother told him again that they would not need the bus today. They were running too far behind. She would drive Derek herself. The man frowned. His expression tightened. He offered to wait a few minutes. He insisted the timing wasn't a problem. Derek's mother didn't bend. She repeated that Derek would not be ready. The man turned away with visible irritation, climbed back onto the empty bus, and drove off into the fog. Inside the dining room, the house returned to its grey stillness. Derek kept eating breakfast. He still hadn't changed into school clothes. His mother stayed by the window longer than usual, watching the street even after the bus disappeared. At exactly 7 o'clock, another bus pulled up. This one looked familiar. Derek's mother stepped outside to speak with the driver. A minute later, she came back inside and tried to act normal, but her face was drained of colour. She told Derek to finish getting dressed. She didn't mention the first driver. She didn't mention the empty bus. She didn't mention the strange man's frustration. Derek didn't learn the truth until years later. When his mother approached the second bus, she recognized the driver immediately. It was Derek's regular driver. Behind him sat all the usual kids, talking and laughing like every other school day. She asked him about the substitute and about calling in sick. He looked confused. He said he had never called in sick. He said there was no substitute on his route. He said no one had been assigned to cover for him that morning. He then picked up his radio and contacted dispatch. He spoke quickly, voice tight, glancing through the fog as if expecting to see something moving out there. Dispatch confirmed it. They had no record of another bus in the area. Whatever pulled up earlier, whatever knocked on their door, whatever insisted on taking Derek, did not belong to the school district at all. The regular driver told Derek's mother to go inside and call the police. He asked her to report every detail. She did exactly that while Derek finished getting ready, unaware of the danger he had been minutes away from stepping into. Police drove through the neighborhood that morning but found nothing. No second bus, no uniformed man, no trace of the empty vehicle that had arrived early. Derek's mother never received an update. No one ever learned whether the man had tried approaching other homes along the route. The only thing anyone could say for certain was that the bus was not a misunderstanding. It was not a replacement. It was not a mistake in scheduling. It was someone looking for a child to take. And if Derek's mother had woken up on time, if they had followed the usual routine, he would have been standing outside at 6:50, right when the empty bus arrived. He would have stepped onto it without a reason to hesitate, and Derek would have never made it to school or back home. One night, after a long shift at work, a young woman named Serena arrived early at her favorite bar. She had plans to meet her friends there, including a co-worker named Raymond, someone she quietly liked. The bar was already alive with noise and warm lighting. She stepped inside, took a seat at the counter, and ordered a beer while she waited. At the bar sat a large, muscular man with a long ponytail that reached the middle of his back. The seat next to him stood empty. When Serena walked in, he motioned toward it, inviting her to sit. She accepted, assuming it would only be for a short moment. He asked why she was alone. He commented on how nervous she looked and told her to relax. His attention felt strange, but the nearly empty bottle of vodka in front of him made her assume he was simply chatty. Serena kept the conversation brief. As she finished her beer, the door opened and her friends came in with Raymond among them. Serena joined them at a table. They ordered more drinks and settled into conversation. Serena had a few more beers and began feeling light, just enough to relax without losing her balance. But something odd kept happening. Each time Serena went to the restroom, the man from the bar appeared near the hallway. He asked if she was all right. He stood close enough for her to notice him every time, but far enough to act casual. It happened again and again. Serena brushed it aside. The bar was crowded, and she felt safe around her friends. Later in the night, her stomach began to turn in a way that did not feel normal. She stepped outside for a cigarette and fresh air. Cold air moved across the street. The noise of the bar softened behind her. Seconds later, the man walked out after her. He asked again if she was okay. His interest felt more direct now. Serena felt uncomfortable, but told him she was fine and returned inside. She ordered a glass of water and leaned toward her friends, telling them she might head home. They immediately offered to walk her there. Serena smiled weakly, grateful for the offer, and took a sip of water. Everything changed at once. Her vision blurred, her stomach twisted, her legs weakened. A heavy wave of dizziness moved through her body. She pushed herself toward the door and stumbled outside before she could collapse. She fell onto a staircase near the entrance and began vomiting. She tried to sit upright, but her body would not cooperate. She could barely keep her eyes open. Her friends found her minutes later. Raymond knelt beside her while the others argued about whether to call a taxi or carry her home. Serena could not stand without their help. Then the man from the bar appeared again. He stepped toward the group, insisting that he lived down the street. He told them she could sleep on his couch. He repeated the offer with a steady confidence, as if he expected them to hand her over. Serena could not lift her head, but her friends could feel something wrong in the way the man spoke. One of her co-workers, older and protective of her, stepped forward and told the man to leave before anything escalated. The man hesitated. He looked at Serena one more time, then turned away and disappeared into the crowd. Her friends forced her to stand, supporting most of her weight, and carried her several blocks to a friend's apartment. They settled her on a couch with a bucket beside her. She spent the night sweating, shaking, and drifting in and out of consciousness. Her vision stayed blurry. Her body felt wrong in a way that normal drinking could not explain. The next morning, she could not stand without vomiting. It took hours before she managed to walk to the train station, eat something, drink water, and head home. Even then, her hands trembled. Her vision stayed unfocused. Her body continued to fight the effects of whatever she had been given. Later, when everyone looked back on the night, the pattern became unmistakable. The man had watched Serena from the moment she sat beside him. He had appeared every time she walked to the restroom. He had followed her outside without hesitation. He had approached the group at her weakest moment. He had insisted she go home with him. And the sudden, overwhelming sickness began after only a sip of water. Someone had interfered with her drink long before she realized anything was wrong. If her friends had let her leave alone, if her co-worker had not stepped between her and the man, if Serena had been separated from the group for even a few minutes, the man who followed her all night might have taken her, and she may not have come back. Alright guys, that will be it for today. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss next week's upload. I drop new stories every week, so there's always something coming. I'll see you in the next one.